Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video. So I just waited until the end of day 2 of Fully Charged Live to do my recap, and hopefully I have enough B-roll to cover over that. It's interesting, right? I think I didn't know what to think going in to Fully Charged Live, what to expect. I mean, I know Fully Charged Live, right? I've followed them basically since it was just Robert Llewellyn way before. I think they had fewer YouTube subscribers when I first started watching Fully Charged Live than I do now, right? So it's kind of a weird little progression to see. Robert Llewellyn kind of spoke to that to the end. I actually was able to introduce myself, but I didn't want to take too much of his time because he was busy, and I guess he was a little bit under the weather, so it makes sense. But at least I got to say hi, thank him for putting it together. Yeah, I saw a lot more, celebrities today than I did yesterday, but I wasn't really seeking it out, right? So I got to just say hi to a few different people like Ben Sullins and Joe Scott from Answers with Joe, Transport Evolved, Nikki and Kate. I got to speak to them a little bit. But maybe more importantly, I got to interact with some, I don't want to call them vendors because people weren't really selling things there. I mean, they kind of were. I think Vinfast was taking registrations and orders, but for the most part, it was just, hey, we're here, and let us tell you about what we're doing. Let's talk. We're asking for your feedback or your input, or just answering your questions. And so it was really nice to see like the big players there in terms of like EV Go and Electrify America, sort of answering questions. And like I said, Vinfast was there. I didn't really interact with like the Vinfast, Aptera, Fisker in terms of like the registrations, things like that. And it's not that I don't expect to be able to interact with them, later or whatever. It's just that my channel in particular is, yeah, I do car reviews, but I've always kind of wanted to lean it more toward the charging infrastructure, right, and how you travel with the car. So yeah, I might get labeled as the Bolt EV guy, but really what I'm worried about is how are we supporting those electric vehicles, because knowing what I know about my personal needs kind of informs me as to what these different charging sites need to look like, how they need to be configured, what they need to be capable of in order to support not just the car that I'm driving, but all the different zero-emission electric vehicles, right? So that's kind of what my emphasis always has been. And so it's really nice to see, in addition to those automakers, the one that I did actually talk to was INDI, which is an independent car maker, right? And they're looking to start building electric cars. They have a very compelling sort of SUV, CUV crossover that's modular in nature, programmable and customizable. So it's sort of catering to the gamer, if you will, in terms of it's basically a rolling computer with large monitors, still has a DIC, but you can add graphics cards, you can upload and create your own apps. That, like they said, it's essentially a jailbroken car, right, or a computer on wheels, but it's a jailbroken computer on wheels. And so I was really interested in that in terms of, it seems competitively priced. It is entering the single most competitive segment of the EV market right now, but it does look like it's going to be a nice alternative, a nice option to have, and the fact that they're based out of California means it's another American sort of upstart. Now, Robert Llewellyn did send out an email, and I guess I must have missed it or I didn't see it, but they were having real issues with any automakers showing up. And So I have sort of a criticism that I noticed the first day is that, and obviously I'm going to be sensitive to this because I've primarily owned GM electric products and there weren't any on display. Now, none of the major automakers provided cars. So the cars that were on display were, Teslas and Kias and Hyundais, and there's the Ford Lightning, the Mach-E. And so it's not so much that GM didn't fail to provide a product any worse than basically every other automaker, but I do consider that a failure, right? The fact that GM wasn't there in an official capacity, the fact that Ford wasn't there in an official capacity, BMW, Hyundai, Kia, you name it, the fact that none of them were there in an official capacity is a problem, because this is a show dedicated to their EV offerings. And sure, they're not even able to keep up with demand right now, so why worry about drumming up more demand? I do get that. But at the same time, you have to think of it long term. There's this huge gap in the floor at the EV Go presentation, even if Cadillac just sort of passively put a Cadillac Lyric there on the EV Go, section of the floor, representing their partnership with EV Go, the Ultium Ready chargers, the 350 kilowatt Delta chargers. I think that would have been a huge win for GM and Cadillac, as well as EV Go, as well as the people that are there looking at cars, electric vehicles. So yeah, it's a huge missed opportunity, and it's unfortunate that those automakers weren't represented. But like I said, on the other hand, there were a number of charging providers there, and the one that really sort of stood out to me and impressed me was ChargeNet. Because if you look at my site reviews, they're checking off almost every box, right? The site concentration is right around 6 chargers per site. They're using solar panel awnings. You're using grid-tie batteries to tie to the system to offset their expenses as demand charges. And they're putting their chargers at locations that they're talking about fast food or just basically fast casual, as they call it, restaurant locations where you're expecting to be there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that, grabbing a meal, grabbing food. So they're actually working specifically with site hosts that are going to benefit these sort of high margin site hosts like fast food restaurants or fast casual restaurants, where they're making a 10-20% margin on each customer that comes through the door. And these chargers are now drawing customers to their business, and those customers are there for the right amount of time to utilize the business. So that ChargeNet is definitely one, in my opinion, to watch. I also got to speak with someone who I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name. So he's working with Kempower and an undisclosed charging provider, and we're finally going to start seeing Kempower units in the United States. So Kempower is a charging provider that I've been aware of, but I haven't really paid much attention to, because if you're not in my native market, right, I can't test it, I can't validate it, I can't use it, I can't experience. So Kempower is a hardware provider that's going to be nice to see how they can integrate. They do much smarter power sharing than other power sharing or power splitting chargers, which maybe that will assuage some of the issues that I've had in past negative experiences that I've had with split charging power. So I'm open to them convincing me, changing my mind, but they have to get to the US market first, and it sounds like they are. Just a lot of stuff. I don't know how many of the panels fully charged live or fully charged show recorded, how many of the live panels they recorded and that they're going to post up later to their channel, but hopefully most of them, because there's a lot of really decent information. it kind of brings me to my final thought about this show. And yes, the lack of the automakers being there is a big problem. But I almost feel like journalists too, EV journalists. So I saw, in my opinion, most of the big name EV journalists. Some of the smaller investigative journalists, things like that, if they couldn't make it, no big deal. But they're not the ones I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about voices from Motor Trend. I'm worried about voices from Car and Driver, right? Not having, if they didn't have a representative there on the floor talking to EV owners, talking to charging providers, talking to these up-and-coming EV automakers, I'm not sure how much you can trust any of their coverage. So I'm just going to be perfectly blunt there. And I'm going to call out like Edmunds, Car and Driver, Motor Trend, any of these big name auto blogs. If they did not have a representative at Fully Charged Live, I question any of their EV content, just to be putting it bluntly. Like, we, as an EV community, as a growing EV community, there's enough knowledge here already and experience here already that if you're going to be issuing Bloomberg, New York Times, if you're going to be posting stories and publishing stories without going to something like Fully Charged Live and interacting with people and interacting with, like I said, the EV community, I don't know how much I value your contributions or opinions at all, right? So I think it's changed my mind in that perspective. I think Robert Llewellyn was right to be concerned that none of the major automakers showed up either, because again, perfect opportunity. If you're an automaker with an EV offering, Fully Charged might have been more important for you than the Detroit Auto Show, the LA Auto Show, CES, right? Like, those are all fine. Go to them, show consumers, but Fully Charged is your chance to listen to consumers. And so I think that's a big disconnect there. And I would say do not underestimate the reach within the EV community that Fully Charged has, because they're looking to bring in all aspects of the EV community and be very inclusive about it, from the actual automakers, the charging providers, up-and-coming charging providers and technology, the DIY community, the EV conversion community like EV West, right? So they have a massive amount of reach. And as an automaker, if you're trying to build EVs and you're not reaching that audience, it's a big problem. So anyway, I hope they post up the stuff that was there. There's a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions, a lot of really important voices. I don't agree with everybody. I'll just put it out there. There's a lot of people there that I don't agree with. But then there's a lot of people that are just real people doing their best to get the word out there. And now I'm blanking out on their channel name, but Liv and Patrick, right? I met them as well with their Mustang, and they now have a Mustang Mach-E GT. So they were there, I guess, EV blog. It's hard to remember all of the names of the channels. I remember the people more than the names, which I don't know. That maybe that just speaks to me, to the authenticity. So yeah, meeting Kyle Connor, meeting Nikki. Though Nikki says we met before, I don't remember it. I'm gonna blame COVID brain, but Nikki and Kate, yeah, it was really nice to see everybody there. Everybody's approachable. Joe Scott was very approachable. And so these are all people that I watch or follow or interact with, and, seeing them there, it's nice to know that there's more and more of this EV community growing, and it really is acting more like a family where you're not all going to get along and you're not all going to agree on some issues, but overall you're all sort of on the same side, working toward the same goals, trying to promote the same things, right? We're all kind of interested in just seeing this, the transportation sector transform and move away from fuels that cause criterion pollutants and particulate pollutants and carbon monoxide, also all of the greenhouse gases, that sort of thing. So it was a really interesting event. I'm glad I went. I didn't really have a goal for it, and maybe that's my fault. But even without that, just being there, I think, was important, and getting to talk to some people was important. So, great event, and thank you to Fully Charged. It was great seeing everybody come across the pond. Welcome to America. And with that, I'm going to head out. I decided to check out another EVgo site here, and plug and charge is still working great, but I think some of their chargers have been derated in power, and I'm not sure why. So maybe an investigation for another day. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and thank you for watching.